Next question. Where will the people in my group come from? Let me clarify this, because a few of you seem to have gotten the impression from the first video that I have a list of names of people in your state or in your town that are just waiting for me to tell them where to go, and they'll come knocking on your door or calling on your phone and asking you if you'll teach them the Grace Walk. Well, I wish that were true, but that's not the case. It's not like I've got a list of folks who are lined up waiting to get in your house or in your group and study this message. Here's the way it's going to work. You need to reach out to your own friends, your own family, the folks you work with, the folks you go to church with. You need to invite folks in and establish your own group. The first line of offense in sharing the message will be with the people you know. Now, as a Grace Walk group's leader, you'll be posted on our website at gracewalk.org. And people will see that. Your contact information will be there if you're comfortable with that. Of course, we'll get your permission first. When people call our office, and it happens all the time, they'll say, where can I find folks in my area who know this message? We'll give them your name and number so they'll be able to contact you. And so there will be folks that come from the outside, so to speak, outside of your sphere of influence and friendships that will connect to you, but don't count on that to build up your group. You need to reach out to your friends and family and the people you already know and start the group yourself. So where will the people in the group come from? Well, they'll come from the folks you know. All right. How often should the group meet is the next question. How often should the group meet? Well, that's up to you. I think ideally, if you can meet once a week, that's good. I've already received emails from some who said, well, we can only meet every other week, twice a month. That's fine. Obviously, the more frequently you meet, the closer the bond will be among those in your group. So I would encourage you to try to meet weekly, but if you can't, well, meet as often as you can, and that'll be a good thing. But there's no hard and fast rule about how often you have to meet, as long as you're meeting regularly, and I know that. Some have asked, do the groups have to move through the materials at the same pace? And the answer is no, you don't. You don't have to move through the materials at the same pace, because obviously we'll be using the same materials. We'll be moving through them in the same order. You understand that? We will be moving through the same materials in the same order, but not necessarily at the same speed. So that'll be okay. Now, on that subject, some have asked, can we use other materials than the ones that you provide, that you offer? And the answer is no, you can't. Listen, don't misunderstand this, and I'll recap this, though I said it in the first video. A lot of people are teaching this message of grace, and there are a lot of good ministries out there, a lot of good teachers sharing it. But God has deposited this message in me in a unique way. It is the Grace Walk message. And I'm inviting folks who have the same DNA as I do, who have the same passion to share the message in the same way I do, to become a part of this Grace Walk group's ministry. If you want to teach other people's materials, you can do that. I encourage you to establish a group and do that yourself. But you can't do that and be a part of this, because this is Grace Walk Ministries. This is Grace Walk groups. I hope this makes sense to you. Some will say, well, are you trying to build your own empire? Or are you just trying to, you think yours is the only material that teaches the truth? Not at all. And either you get it or you don't get it. And if you don't, I respect you and say, you can start a group on your own. But if you get it, you do get it. That there is a need in my mind, in my way of thinking, to, if this is going to have the name Grace Walk on it, to preserve the integrity of what we're doing. And if you went to work with another ministry, you wouldn't teach Steve McVeigh's materials. You teach the materials of that organization. And the same is true here. Even in your own local church, you don't just bring in, if you're in such and such a church, you don't bring in materials from doctrinal viewpoints that don't fit and aren't consistent with your church. There has to be a cohesion. There has to be a sync. It has to be in sync what you teach there with what your church stands for, and that's the way it is here too. Obviously, there are people I respect who teach from the charismatic approach, people that teach from an anti-charismatic approach. There are people that will teach from the viewpoint of the Calvinist, and those that will teach from the viewpoint of the Arminian. Those who just have different doctrinal viewpoints. And, I go into churches of all denominations, and that's God's doing. But I will say that one thing I think that the Lord has honored is that I've not allowed myself to get into doctrinal distinctives that divide denominations. I've not done it when I speak publicly, and we're not going to do it in these Grace Walk groups either. We're going to stay focused singly on the message of Christ and Him crucified, our co-crucifixion with Him, and what that means to walk in grace. I know this won't be executed perfectly, but at least by me insisting that you use the materials that I provide, I'll know what the materials are that you're using, and I hope you can understand that and that it makes sense to you. So you'll be using materials that come out of Grace Walk Resources, and I'll tell you the order of those materials as we go through it together. Okay, let's see. It looks like I have a minute or so left. Can I ask somebody else to co-lead with me? Someone said. Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll talk more about that. I'm going to encourage you as I get into the actual training part of leading your group about the importance of having an apprentice, somebody that's learning to lead the group, because as your group grows, it'll reach a place where hopefully it'll multiply and one group will become two. And you need to have somebody in the wings ready to take over that second group. We'll talk more about that later. Here's one. Susie and Robin, this one is to you. You ask, what if a wacko shows up? That's a good question. What if a wacko shows up? Well, a wacko probably will, but maybe you need to define wacko. You know, some people are going to think you're the wacko for teaching this message. You get that, don't you? I know you're kidding about the question, but the truth is we will talk about what to do to handle the group so that if people get in that try to dominate or take the group in a different direction than what the group was established for, how to handle that. We'll talk about those kinds of things. Well, let me do one more. What is my relationship to Grace Walk Ministries? This is from somebody who said to me, Steve, I have a concern about your liability by opening the ministry up and letting other people be a part of the ministry. Well, understand this. The involvement of the Grace Walk group leaders to Grace Walk Ministries is purely an involvement of fellowship and an association. There is no legal relationship between you and Grace Walk Ministries by your involvement in this. I'm not liable for what you do and say, and you're not liable for what I do and say. We are a fellowship. We're an association. Grace Walk Group's an association that comes together under this banner of the Grace Walk, and we're sharing this message together. And so there's no legal affiliation here, but you're a part of the ministry, but you're a part of the ministry in the same way you're a part of your church family. You know what I'm saying? Again, to make that comparison. If you were to go out and teach heresy outside your church's walls, well, they can't control that, nor would they try to, nor could somebody come after your pastor or your church because of what you're saying or doing. You're your own person and you do your own thing. But what you do within Grace Walk groups, it is going to be superintended by the overall objectives and purpose of Grace Walk Ministries. But as far as the connection, there's no legal connection there. Well, we're out of time. Write me with your questions if I didn't touch on your question. Somebody said, how long will the training last? Not sure yet. It'll be ongoing. It'll be indefinite because we'll be involved with each other for years to come, and I'm sure we'll be tweaking and maturing and sharpening our focus as we go along, but it'll last for a long time. Well, that's all I have time for now. Again, I'm over my time limit, but write me with your questions if I didn't answer it. You can send your questions to Gracewalk Groups at gracewalk.org, and I'll be posting these videos, as I said, at least once a week. We will get into some specific training about the groups in the next few weeks, but I just wanted to put this up as a follow-up and let you know 40 groups and counting, 40 folks have responded, and I'm glad you've responded, and I know that the Lord's going to use you in a big way as we share this message together. Keep praying about this, keep checking back on this site, and we'll follow through with this and see what God's going to do. Thanks for watching. See you next time.